In our last lecture module, we saw Hume argue that matters of fact are all dependent upon this associative principle of connection, the cause and effect. And he argued that we cannot know this cause and effect relationship a priori because the idea of the cause and the idea of the effect are distinct in that we cannot discover an effect inside of a cause. They are forever separate and hence unknowable a priori. And we reviewed a number of arguments or versions of the same argument that he gives to establish that conclusion. In this section, we're going to turn our attention to how he further develops this argument into his full skeptical conclusion. He wants to argue that, look, if we can't discover this a priori, then there must be some principle by which it comes about. And he'll argue that cause and effect reasoning is based upon this principle that the future will resemble the past. He'll then ask, is there any justification for this principle that can be found so that we can in fact know cause and effect relationships? He'll consider three possible justifications, but he'll reject each of them as inadequate. He'll consider reason, probability, and appeals to secret powers. In each case, he'll reject these justifications as sufficient to establish a knowledge of cause and effect relationships based upon a knowledge of the principle that the future resembles the past. And at this point, he reaches the skeptical conclusion: we cannot know matters of fact. From there, we'll see that he moves on to give an explanation for cause and effect reasoning. And his explanation for cause and effect reasoning is essentially psychological. He says that it's habit, or in his terminology, custom, that leads us to form cause and effect associations and to travel from causes to effect in our reasoning. He'll suggest that only experience can create these kind of strong associations between cause and effect, and as a result, it is experience that is the source of our cause and effect associations and not the world itself. He'll then try and distinguish between belief and imagination. And this will turn out to be important because he wants to allow that there are certain things that we definitely have reasons for and evidence for based on our experiences, and those result in our beliefs. But there are fanciful, whimsical, imaginative things that aren't based in experience, and we don't have to countenance those. So he wants to develop a criterion for distinguishing between ideas or associations that are based in our experience, our memory, and ideas and associations that aren't, or aren't sufficiently based in our experience and our memory. This is a quote from the treatise. I like it because I think it's a really succinct and eloquent quote that expresses his reasoning in this part of the argument. In forming a conclusion from experience, I must reason as follows. I have found that such an object has always been attended with such an effect, and I foresee that other objects, which are in appearance similar, will be attended with similar effects. But what in our reasoning or experience guarantees that the past will resemble the future? In paragraph 50, we get a similar statement of a similar line of thought in the inquiry. For all inferences from experience suppose as their foundation that the future will resemble the past, and that similar powers will be conjoined with similar sensible qualities. If there be any suspicion that the course of nature may change, and that the past may be no rule for the future, all experience becomes useless and can give no rise to inference or conclusion. So Hume is going to base our cause and effect reasoning on this underlying principle or foundation that the future resembles the past. And then he's going to ask, is there any basis for this principle that would give it a superior epistemic status and allow us to know the things that come about through our cause and effect associations? He considers three possible sources for our reasoning that might allow them to give the principle that the future resembles the past certainty and hence the status of knowledge. The first candidate they consider is reason, and he says reason is not their source, as the opposite of the principle is not a contradiction. The future resembles the past, but it's consistent and conceivable that it doesn't. In fact, oftentimes, in many ways, the future will not resemble the past. Likewise, he says, probability won't help. so, as the probability that the future will resemble the past can only be based upon past experience, and hence to extrapolate to our future experiences requires the principle itself. Finally, he considers appeal to secret or unperceived powers. Since we neither see them nor do we have any guarantee that they will not change other than that they have not in the past, and the past resembles the future. And again, this argument seems to require instead of establish the principle that the future resembles the past. So let's take a moment and recap. Matters of fact are contingent propositions. Our beliefs in matters of fact are generated through the action of this associative principle of connection, cause, and effect. We try to determine if the relationships engendered by cause and effect have the mark of certainty and hence would result in knowledge, and we discover that we cannot establish the connections between causes and effects a priori. We then investigate further to determine what exactly is the basis for cause and effect associations, and we determine that they're based upon a principle of the future resembling the past. So we decide we must investigate the nature of this principle to see if this principle can be established with certainty and hence with knowledge. We look at reason, but relationships between ideas will not establish the principle that the future resembles the past. The reasons for this are well worn at this point. Our ideas are wedded to the particular moment in which we have them or remember them. To apply them beyond that moment would require that we were able to draw a connection from one distinct context to another, from cause to effect, from past to future. That is, from within the ideas themselves, from within the cause to the effect, from within the past to the future. Yet no such connection is available for us. And this is the only atemporal possibility that Hume considers. We then turn to two other possibilities, probability and appeal to secret or unperceived powers. And what we discover is both probability and appeal to secret or unperceived powers presuppose the principle that the future will resemble the past and hence cannot be used to establish it with any certainty. It's at this point that Hume has reached his skeptical conclusion. We cannot know matters of fact because they are based upon two principles, neither of which can be justified to the extent that would be required for it to count as knowledge. At this point, then, he's established his conclusion to his satisfaction. He thinks that he's shown that we, in fact, cannot know matters of fact. Matters of fact are based upon this principle of connection or association, that is, cause and effect. Cause and effect is based on this principle that the future will resemble the past, and neither cause and effect associations nor the principle upon which we base them is established with certainty, and hence would be a principle that we could know or a association that we could know. Now he wants to turn his attention to discussing what he should do now that he's established the skeptical conclusion. Well, he has explained why in general we form beliefs about matters of fact. What he hasn't explained is why we form the specific sorts of beliefs in the specific matters of fact that we do. And for this, he's going to combine experience and psychology to offer up a psychological and experience-based explanation for why it is that we form the beliefs about the matters of fact that we do. And so in paragraph 59, he tells us all belief of matter of fact or real existence is derived merely from some object present to the memory or senses, and a customary conjunction between that and some other object. All these operations are species of natural instincts, which no reasoning or process of thought and understanding is able either to produce or to prevent. So ultimately, Hume is offering up an explanation that combines experience with custom or habit to produce our beliefs in the particular matters of fact that we believe in. He doesn't, however, want to abandon all epistemic merit for these productions, and we'll turn our attention to his attempt to try and differentiate amongst different matters of fact and amongst different attitudes towards them in our next lecture module.